For some analysis of today's budget, I'm now joined by Jim Farney. He's the Regina Director of the Johnson Shoyama School of Public Policy. Jim, what stood out to you in the documents today?
What stood out to me, kind of taking a look at it as a whole, is how there wasn't any one thing. You know, it was very much of a piece with the budgets we'd seen before COVID, except for that big piece of borrowing that they're doing to maintain the status quo. And if you look to the future, it lines up with the government's growth plan as well. So unlike some ideas you're seeing floating around at the federal level or in the US with Biden's budget, this is not a radical change in direction.
In budgets, there are often winners and losers. Who is walking away happy today and who is going to be the most displeased?
I mean, there's a number of kind of smaller initiatives. You know, the harm reduction sites, for example, would be a group that clearly lost. But more generally, people who either look to or hope to see the government step in and clearly solve problems with new big programs, whether that be in childcare or long-term care, probably put those in the disappointed category. I think the people who've done well over the last decade, you know, business, exporters, people who don't like paying taxes, are, as they've been for the last 10 years, quite happy tonight.
All right, of everything in the budget, what was the biggest surprise? There has to be one.
I mean, I think probably the single biggest surprise was around the borrowing, to be honest. You know, we knew they were going to have to do that. I think they probably pushed their plan to get back to balance out much further than they'd hoped. So I think the details of that are surprising. The optimism, I think some people might say, around the price of oil is a bit of a surprise. But otherwise, you can look back at the 1819 and 1920 budgets and kind of just follow it along.
All right, we are actually getting a full sitting/session, Jim. Going forward over the next, it's the 6 weeks, what are you going to be watching for?
I think if you watched so kind of the debate in the budget and also some of the comments from the NDP before, what you're going to see is really a clash over two visions of government, right? The NDP, the kind of social democratic side, under Miley, that's been pretty vocal, and you know, a politics of inclusion and of equity. From the Sask party, it's going to be a politics of growth and of government staying out of your way and letting you solve your own problems. I'm sure we'll see that come up around the carbon tax. We'll see that as the two parties go through the budget and talk about schools and social services and everything else that government does in those terms. But I think they're rooted in two very different visions. And I'm curious to see if the two leaders do anything novel in that framework. We're at a moment where there's a lot of new ideas floating around in politics. I didn't see today in the back and forth much of that from either one. So I'm curious to see if 6 weeks of legislative debate makes them become quite innovative.
All right, Jim, thanks so much for your perspective tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Sam. Good night.